All right, with that, let's go to tonight's speakers. John Bowditch from the Immersion Lab.
Okay, so I want to introduce my team before we get too deep into this because we're going to be moving around a lot of technology up here. So Professor Eric Williams and Josh Antonuccio, Anthony Ziccola, Andrea Schwart, who's wearing a headset that we're going to be showing off here in a little bit, Andrew Beal and Alex Rawson. So we're going to be talking tonight about immersive media, and we're going to kind of fly through a lot of this, but we hope to at least introduce you to some of the stuff we're working with. And if you're interested in learning more, there'll be plenty of opportunities to come up afterwards, see some of this technology, and ask us questions. Okay, so first, we represent the Grid Lab, the Game Research and Immersive Design Lab. It's actually located right across the street here in the EW Scripps building. We have a lot of different activities going on at the Grid Lab: Open Computer Lab, research and development space for virtual and augmented realities, which we're going to be showing off tonight. We also have a motion capture facility. So this is one of our motion capture suits. You've probably seen these before for any film that has special effects associated with it. These are designed to be very tight-fitting, so we get people in these suits head to toe. We have these little reflective markers that are positioned around the body, and infrared cameras actually pick up the motion in that space. And we can then convert that into a computer animation and apply that to a game. We can apply that to visual effects for a film. So we actually have a capture space that's made up of 20 different cameras. And so we can actually capture 6 individual performers at one time. They can interact with each other. Primarily when we show off multiple people in these, we do like martial arts sequences or attempt to do martial arts sequences, stuff like that. If you're interested in this technology, or you want to come up and feel this stuff afterwards, that's fine as well. So the Grid Lab was fortunate enough to be one of the inaugural receivers of fund for the first round of the OU Innovation Strategy Funds. And that is a culmination that we call the Immersive Media Initiative. There are 7 colleges involved in this initiative. There are 20 different professors and over 24 students as of right now. We do multiple things, but primarily we work in the research and development space for virtual and augmented realities. And this is just a sample of some of the technology that we use in this initiative. We also have course offerings, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. We've tried very hard to make this interdisciplinary. So Josh, Eric, and I are all professors in the School of Media Arts and Studies. We've made this curriculum for virtual and augmented reality Scripps College of Communication level classes, both at the undergraduate level, and then we also have media classes at the graduate level, which we'll talk about. But the idea is they are open to all students, regardless of what your major is. And there's more opportunities which we're going to talk about. So what is immersive media? It's collectively what we consider virtual reality. So we have a couple of different virtual reality headsets up here. Virtual reality is when you are completely shut off from anything else going on around you. So if I was in a virtual reality helmet, I would see everything digitized visually. I would wear noise-canceling headphones. And basically, I would have no idea that I was surrounded in a cafe here if it was a perfect setup. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is a little bit different. So this is a picture of an augmented reality headset here. Augmented reality allows you to see everything in this space, so it's a semi-transparent display, and then we can actually project digital objects in that space. Right? Probably the most prominent example of this from like the last 5 years is the Google Glass. It was somewhat limited in what you could actually do in an interior space, and it was primarily just an extension of like Gmail and Google Maps. The technology has really come a long way, and we can actually now put digital interactive objects in this space, and we're going to actually show this off here in a minute. So we believe that augmented and virtual reality is going to be a disruptive technology. So you probably hear disruptive technology thrown around a lot. A lot of disruptive technology from the last 100 years has not been sexy, right? You could argue that air conditioning has been a disruptive technology. It's probably saved a lot more lives than some other technologies. Probably saved a lot more lives than the iPhone, for example. Refrigeration is a disruptive technology. The automobile, the airplane. If you look back over the last 40 years, we really have identified two sustained disruptive technologies. One is the internet in general. It's probably the thing that's connected the world the most, by far. Its roots date back to the 70s and early 80s. You're probably more familiar with the internet as the World Wide Web, right, which was really invented in 1990. It's not terribly old, right, but you can't now imagine your life without the internet, right? It has completely redesigned the way we share information, create information, the way we explore media and share media. Kind of a natural evolution of that is for you to have the internet in your pocket, okay, and that's where the smartphones come in. It seems like smartphones have been a part of our lives forever, but if the smartphone were a human, it'd be going into 4th or 5th grade now, okay? So the iPhone actually turns 10 this year. And there are now over 2 billion iPhones and Android devices in use every day. Bill Gates was right when he said that everyone is going to have a desktop computer to access information. I just don't think he realized that desktop computer equivalent was going to fit in your pocket, right? We believe that we're on the verge of the next disruptive technology, and that is going to be virtual and augmented reality. Whether that is just a natural extension of the smartphone leaving your pocket and then being worn on your face, that's one possibility, but there's so many more opportunities than just natural evolution like that. Virtual reality dates back over 200 years. It was actually invented in a paper by Sir Charles Whetstone. He came up with the stereoscope, which is basically a still image with two offset photographs. And when you view them through a device like this is a stereograph, it creates the illusion that it's actually three-dimensional, right? So if you look at this image here of the pyramids and compare the two, you can see a slight offset between the trees, especially. When you look at those through a stereograph, it makes it feel as if it is actually 3D or has depth to it. Right? We've obviously come a long way since this. Kind of the digital virtual reality dates back to the 60s. Kind of jokingly in our lab, we created something very similar to this for 360 video capture. We used a baseball helmet and some old hardware. We didn't realize it was something that looked so similar to this Philco headsight helmet from the 1960s. But people started believing that you could present this digital information on a screen in front of you, wear it basically. A lot of that technology was first done for fighter pilots, okay, heads-up information as you're flying a plane. NASA got into this technology in the 1980s and carried on to the 1990s. The problem with this technology 25 years plus ago is it was insanely expensive. We have a headset from the late 1990s in our lab that it has Mickey Mouse ears on it right now. It's on an old mannequin. It's kind of a joke in our lab. It was about $25,000 when it was brand new. Now it's just something we put toys on. The 1990s kind of killed virtual reality in many ways, due to some really bad movies. Everyone kind of assumed that virtual reality was evil. So the Lawnmower Man, Johnny Mnemonic, a lot of the places where you could actually interact with virtual reality, like at arcades or other special spaces, it was very expensive and it wasn't that compelling of an experience. If you tried virtual reality in the 1990s, even if you're not prone to motion sickness, you probably got a little queasy trying it out. The ideas were there, the technology just did not match its potential, right? And then in the late 1990s, I don't know if this is going to play because we're streaming, but the Matrix kind of helped people reimagine what it could possibly be, okay? And this kind of led to technological developments in the late 2008, 2009 range, and this is what's led to virtual reality today. So this is kind of where we're going to start showing off some of this gear. What changed? It became a lot more affordable. Okay, so We have two headsets up here. This is the Oculus Rift, and this is the HTC Vive. 20 years ago, these would have been 20 grand a piece. The Vive, I believe, or the Vive is $800. The Oculus is $600. You need a moderately good computer to run it, but all in all, it's much more accessible. And there are now hundreds of thousands of these in production. So the quality of the production and the affordability has increased quite a bit. The software has also increased. Okay? You're not as prone to motion sickness with these anymore because the graphical quality is much better. This is also much more accessible to people now. It's easier to develop for. We have a lot of tools that we use for some of our other projects that we can now easily apply to virtual reality projects. And people are starting to see that this technology can actually benefit them for applications that they're working on in their job or education. So all of this technology right now is tethered. It requires a lot of wires. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of incidents where we've tripped over our technology trying it out. This is our newest toy. It looks like a Ghostbuster backpack. We actually call this Vankman from Ghostbusters. This is a desktop PC that you wear as a backpack. Okay, it's battery powered, and unlike a laptop, you can actually hot swap batteries, so you don't have to keep it plugged in. You can pop one battery out and let it run on the other one while it charges up. You put this over your eyes, and then you have a couple different options for controls. So this is the Vive controller. It's actually tracked in 3D space using this box here. This box is called a lighthouse, and we put two of these in a room, and you can move around in that space, and it'll track all of your movements. It's based off of line of sight. Okay, so the distance for something like this is you can spread them 16 to 18 feet apart, and you can walk around in that space, and it'll track you without problems. Okay, another example, this is the Oculus Rift. This actually has headphones built into it, and it's got a slightly different controller that goes along with it and a slightly different tracking technology. Okay, the concepts are still the same. It uses infrared technology to track your motion. It tracks the usage of the controllers in 3D space, but ultimately it's tethered. We think in a year or two these are going to start becoming wireless and a lot more accessible to use. We're going to come back to this little device attached to it here in a second. I just want to kind of give you an outlook on what the industry is looking like. So a lot of people believe that virtual reality is now here to stay. Usually when I look at charts like these, I cringe because they all look like hockey sticks to me, right? They all start off kind of flat and then exponential growth where everyone becomes a billionaire that works in this field. And actually there's a lot of other projections out there that show the industry is going to be a lot bigger than this. It projects, this projection from Statista is $40 billion industry by 2020. Which is huge. That's bigger than the games industry currently is. We believe that it may not be that big, but even if it's just a half of that, it's something that's now going to be here to stay. So what are we doing across the street? Well, we have a lot of development stations to create stuff using this technology, but also to play it back. We have a current class going on right now called COM 1200, which is Understanding Virtual Reality Technology, and that's really just to get exposed to this technology. We have 80 students currently going through that class, and they're just getting exposed to how this technology works and what kind of experiences you can have in it. One of the worst things for us to do is just to talk about virtual reality. It's something you have to actually experience to kind of understand it. So we encourage you at some point to get over to the Grid Lab. Oftentimes we do open houses on Friday afternoons, department-wide, and you can come and explore this. We also have a 25-foot by 25-foot VR tracking space, so you can safely walk around in that space in VR and try out different experiences. And soon we'll be adding what we're calling omnidirectional platforms. So one of the things that you don't always have is a large open space where you can walk around. So we want to come up with some kind of solution that's almost like an omnidirectional treadmill, or something that can harness you in place and allow you to walk in place, but still translate that into moving in virtual reality. That's something we're working on. Also more tracking and interactive technology. Okay, so one of the projects we're currently working on is with the Department of Psychology here. It is a blood draw therapy tool. So you can see Aaron here, one of our student technicians. He's wearing a Vive, and there's that little technology mounted to the front of that. That's called a Elite Motion. All it does is basically tracks movement in front of the headset. So in this case, it's actually tracking the motion of his arms, and it's translating that onto a digital avatar that's positioned in a recreation of a Red Cross blood draw bus. Okay, so the goal of this is to desensitize people to giving blood. Okay, so instead of actually having them sit in a Red Cross bus and have actual needles come at them and all the stuff associated with that, we put them in this digital space. The medical technician holds something like this, and we have accessories attached off of this device. And you may see a virtual needle coming towards you, but it's really just a pencil eraser. We still get people to jump out of their seat, though, with that interaction. But this is really designed to help you connect to the fact that I'm in a virtual space, but it feels real enough to me that I might become desensitized to giving blood. This is something that we started development on in August, and we have the first build of it out now. Okay. Augmented reality is definitely going to be an industry of growth, especially in what we think education. So in this image here, the user is wearing a Microsoft HoloLens. She's in her living room, and she's digitally projecting, I think that's Machu Picchu, and she's able to interact with that. So we're going to actually demo that now. So this is Andrea, and this might be just a little bit laggy because we're wirelessly streaming this here. So you're actually seeing a broadcast from her headset here. So this is, she's wearing C-3PO, the other R2-D2 is back at the lab. So she can see all of you just fine. And then this technology is actually scanning the space in 3D as she walks around. And it's remembering where these digital objects are. Okay? So she pre-positioned some of this stuff. A puppy on the table here. You might have seen her walking around earlier and positioning stuff. You can see what she chose to represent you. Kittens. Right, so this is, imagine the possibilities of this. This is really tetherless, okay? So right now when we work with computing, we're usually in front of a desk, or in a coffee shop, and we have a laptop in front of us, but we're limited to the screen space that's presented here. She's basically able to use this entire cafe as her screen space. And when she places objects in this space, it'll remember the placement of those objects forever. She can come back a month from now, and the unicorn and the kittens will still be there. So aside from these cute animals and dinosaurs and stuff that you can place, you can imagine any kind of data science application you want with this. Okay, so this is made by Microsoft, so all of the Microsoft applications are native to it, so we can put Excel sheets up, PowerPoint presentations, web browsers. But imagine if you had NASA data coming in large volumes of NASA data. You may be restricted to just presenting that on a computer screen, but if you had an entire room this size, you could just lay it out for everyone to see. I think you got too far. You went offline here. Let me see if we can get you back here. Auto reconnecting. Just a second. I think the projector disconnected. There we go. Okay, so you can probably imagine the possibilities of this. The problem with this technology now is it's very expensive. Each of these headsets are several thousands of dollars. So it's not something you can really outfit an entire classroom with. But people are working on technology similar to this that'll be integrated into your cell phone or to an iPad, tablet, stuff like that. And so this will be much more readily accessible in, say, a classroom in the near future. It's all controlled by gestures. If you can see here, she's basically just doing one of two gestures, what we call a bloom, which you go like this and just spread it out. That brings up a menu. And then to represent a mouse click, she just taps. She can also talk to it through the Cortana application. And so the kind of applications we're developing with this, we're working on a VR application called the Ruqua Rift with Nancy Stevens, who's here. We're basically recreating Tanzania from 25 million years ago, and we're bringing back to life a lot of these extinct species that Nancy has discovered. And so you're going to be able to experience them in an enclosed virtual reality experience, but we also want you to be able to place them on your table like this and have a discussion about them. Okay, so if you want to see the HoloLens closer up afterwards, you can. I think we're going to move on to the next subject. Well, that's pretty good. Okay, so one of the other areas we're working in is filmmaking, virtual reality filmmaking. And so I'm actually going to turn it over now to Eric Williams, who's going to talk a little bit about our 360-degree production. Here you go.
So I want to kind of tie some of the ideas that John's already been talking about. Thanks. I want to tie in some of the ideas that John has already introduced. And I'm going to talk about 360-degree video making. And it's virtual reality in that when you put on the headset, everything that you are seeing has been digitally recreated by the cameras. Now, what sets this camera apart from a traditional film camera is this is actually made up of 6 different cameras, each pointing in a different direction. So instead of a camera pointing at people in the front row, we have a camera pointing this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And in post-production, you stitch all of those camera images together, and it creates an entire globe of visuals around your head. And so if I put this camera right here and recorded for half an hour, it would record all of us that can see the camera. And then sometime in the future, I could put the headset back on, or put a headset on, and it would be as if my head was right here. And I can turn to the left, I can turn to the right, I can see everybody for that entire half hour. And one of the great things about the internet and our iPhones, right, is I can now stream this through YouTube. And so now, you won't be able to see this, but if you download a YouTube app and go into the 360 videos, as you move around, I can see whatever's going on in this living room. So this is a mystery. It's a 5-minute mystery. You're supposed to find out who steals the candlesticks. And there's multiple characters, and it's as if you're sitting at the table. Right? So you can imagine that for narrative video. And as John pointed out, the cost is being lowered. Right? So now you could take that same technology, put it in a Google Cardboard that costs $10, strap that to your head, and now as you turn your head, you don't have to use your hand and your iPhone, or you can take it up a notch, and for $65, you get the more comfortable plastic version.
Eric, can you use a mic?
Or
He's a video guy. I'm not.
or you could take it up and use the HTC Vive, right? And so there's multiple layers of experience, but they all allow you to do the same thing, which is interact and observe in a 360-degree environment. And that's really cool for narrative. But what we're finding is that there's actually a really, really important use for that in education, and specifically we've been doing a lot of work in medical education. And so this summer, we were able to take a rig like this one into an emergency room in Columbus. Thanks. and we stuck it to the ceiling and hung it down at the exact height of a surgeon's head in the trauma bay when real traumas were coming through. Now, why is that important? Well, now you can train hundreds of medical students, and they are now literally standing in an emergency room for the entire 20-minute procedure as an accident victim comes in. And these were real victims, right? These are real patients in the real emergency room being treated by a full team. And so hundreds now are standing right next to the head surgeon, which is really cool for observing the surgery. But then what we figured out is that it's also really cool for watching interdisciplinary dynamics within the emergency room. Maybe the nursing staff now wants to watch it and see how everybody interrelates. Maybe the CEOs want to come in and look at how everybody's functioning in this complex system. Maybe the medical students who haven't even come yet want to sit there and watch this for an hour or two so that they can learn where all the equipment is. Then we started realizing, oh, you could do that anywhere in the hospital. Any grad student who's getting ready to go on I want to say internship, but what's the word? A residency, could go and spend an hour or a day in any of the places where they might go to a residency. You could go sit in an ICU unit for 3 or 4 hours and just watch to see how it works. You can go into a scenario where, conflict management scenario, a violent person that you're learning how to deal with intense situations with multiple team members. You can put a person right in the middle of that scenario and recreate it and re-experience it. And so we're finding that this is a really dynamic tool for getting people ready for reality. And so a lot of what we're calling these are pre-reality experience, the pre-reality. Go and spend a morning in the VR of the emergency room, and then the next, that afternoon, go into the real emergency room. Pre-reality, reality, and now you're better prepared for the intensity that you're about to experience. So anyway, we've got a team over at the Grid Lab that's working on all sorts of different uses for this, and then we're also doing some really cool experiments with digital storytelling within 360, right? Because we're all used to seeing the close-up or seeing the medium shot and the director is guiding your eye. But what do you do now where the audience can look wherever they want, whenever they want? You don't want them to miss the important part of the story, and so we're trying to figure out how do you tell narrative stories when you're actually the character in the room and making them look in different places. So anyway, that's kind of an introduction to what we're doing. This is the high end, that one, the 6 GoPro rig. This is about 20% of the cost. It's simply 2 cameras back to back, but it's incredibly mobile. We're sending a team to the Columbus Zoo to go diving with manatees and sharks. So they'll be able to give you the experience of what it's like to be swimming around. And then we have a real simple unit, excuse me, which is called the Ryko Theta. It doesn't do so well with video, but it does really well with 360 still photographs. And so you can imagine we've been talking a lot with journalism students about how can you use 360-degree photography to cover stories, because now you can see both sides of the lens, right? We always talk about the subjectivity or the objectivity of being a reporter. Well, now you literally shoot everything, and so then the audience members can choose to look at what they think is the most important part of the shot. So there's been some really cool work done. I just saw a drone flyover of eastern Ukraine, and so you can actually see the remnants of a war-torn city from a kind of a 360 aerial view, which again gives you a really objective impression of what's going on over there. So, am I good for time?
Okay, so we take the George Lucas stance on production where we treat visuals as 50% and the sound design as the other 50%. So Josh Antonucci is going to talk a little bit about our immersive audio production capabilities.
Yeah, so a professor of mine used to say that video without audio is just surveillance. So that's the real trick right now. how do you create immersive experience that's believable, that actually puts you in the scene? So, in Eric's example with the 360 camera, unless you have the sound, you're not really here. So it's really interesting, just to add a few things to what John said. One of the things I do at OU is I take a group of students to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas every year. 2 years ago, every pretty much session, major companies were talking about VR, kind of dipping their toes in the water. Last year, across the board, if you were not 15 minutes early, all the sessions were sold out on VR and AR. And this is a disruptive technology. It's going to hit every sector, and it already is. So on the sound side, as with a lot of the production right now, everyone agrees we are in the wild west of development. I mean, just by example with the video side, just compare this unit, which we printed, 3D printed this case for these GoPro cameras, versus the Hero unit. That's 1 year out, just over a year. This is what we had to shoot on for our first VR film, and now the technology is catching up. On the audio side, I was in Los Angeles a few months ago for the first ever Audio Engineering Society gathering for producers in virtual and augmented reality. George Sanger, who's the director of audio for a company called Magic Leap, which if you haven't heard of them, they do not have a product out yet, but Google has invested over $1 billion into them because they are promising the next wave of holographic technology. He talked about how experience in VR is going to be dictated more by audio than by video. So for instance, in Eric's example, if you're in this room and you're streaming through this camera, you can close your eyes, you can lose the video, but still have a sense of placement, boundary cues, sense of location, a number of people just by the audio side of it. So the audio is going to continue to be very important in making the experiences believable and immersive. I just want to throw one other term out for you, and that's the term empathy. A lot of companies that are working in immersive media see VR as an empathy machine. So for instance, I went to a session last South by Southwest where the United Nations were presenting their immersive producer. What they're starting to do now is develop immersive experiences in other countries to take diplomats there in VR. So for instance, with the Syrian civil war, they took diplomats there in VR, had a team go and shoot, and then bring the content back. What they found that diplomats would interact with people. So children in a bombed out school would wave, and in VR, the people would wave back. They would actually cry by being there. So the difference is fun. It's a fundamentally different experience than reading about it or even seeing video. You actually have this sense that you're there. Just a personal experience, when we were running the first Oculus Rift development kits, I let my daughter walk through downtown Tokyo. That was 2 years ago, right? She still talks about it as if, she's like, I have memories like I was there. And that was like really early 360 video with not really great sound. So, just keep in mind, like the internet's just old enough to drink. The iPhone is about 10, coming up on 10 years. So we're in the first stages, and it's really incredible in terms of fidelity and immersion. So on the audio side then, like Eric was saying, there's been a lot of development in the tech. So starting out, we kind of had to figure things out. There weren't a lot of products out in the market. So we actually bought 2 Tetra mics. These are developed by a company in New Jersey. These are Core Sound Tetra microphones. These record what are called ambisonic audio. So there's kind of first order ambisonic and higher order. This is a first order ambisonic that records basically in 4 patterns, but it records in something called B format audio. So you actually have to, it's a specific type of format that has to be coded and decoded with special software to create what's called a binaural experience. So just human hearing is binaural by nature, so this 3DO setup mimics that. So we hear basically with 2 omnidirectional microphones on either side of your head and then fixed stuff in the middle, your brain, right? So that's what this mimics. But in capture, this does a great job of just capturing space. But as Eric was saying, if I'm looking around, I need a microphone or some kind of a setup to be able to actually lock audio. So, right now without looking, I can tell you that somebody's making coffee over there. Somebody's over here is clicking around. I can tell there's a wall behind me because of the reflections I'm getting, and I can tell if I close my eyes that there's space in those directions. So I need a microphone that can actually reinterpret that for the user so that they themselves, their brain is tricked into believing that they're there. So that was kind of the first setup. But what was great is like when we got these last year, in our research we learned that companies like Oculus, Jaunt VR, which was they're kind of like top-notch 360 and have really set a lot of trends, have gotten a lot of early investment in VR technology. We found out that's what they were using, so we were able to get some kind of right out of the gate, which was great. But just recently in December, Sennheiser released their first wave of VR microphones. So this is the Sennheiser Ambio series. The next kind of big commercial product that's coming out, Rode is coming out with a VR video mic that's amazing. It's an all-in-one unit. So we're hoping to get one of those in the next month. It's been following very closely in terms of what we have for capture on the ground. So in terms of fidelity level, like with the healthcare shoot, we had a great opportunity last summer. Courtney Barnett, Grammy nominee, amazing artist, played the final season of Saturday Night Live, connected with her manager, and we got permission to shoot her set at a Midwest Music Festival just down the road, the Nelsonville Music Festival, and really pitched to them that this is going to be a disruptive technology for the music industry. And across the board, artists, labels, major promotion companies, Live Nation, the largest music promotion company that run festivals such as Bonnaroo, they have actually bought their own VR company, Next VR. And we've been in talks. We actually had talks with Bonnaroo to shoot there, as well as C3, who puts on festivals such as ACL Live. We've been in talks with Spotify to do shoots because they can recognize that if you can combine an immersive experience with a fan's love for an artist, that there's a huge market to explore there. But everybody's trying to crack the code on the sound side, and so audio has been really exciting for that. So in terms of the fidelity level, like at the Courtney Barnett shoot, we only had the binaurals at that point, and now as we've been kind of going at higher levels, we've been finding that the tetrahedrals have been delivering amazing sound. So basically we have field packs in different configurations for an 8-track, so these field packs will go with a team to go out and shoot. As I mentioned, we have 4-way sound connectors off of these. And on the journalism side, like if we're trying to get somebody out in the field quickly, if we're going to do a really quick 360 video, we just got these Zoom H2Ns. These are actually all-in-one units. It's super easy, just click and play. And there's actually a 4-channel selection on the top. So a journalist can get into a situation, set up a PixPro that in 5 minutes, and you can have somebody there. And the whole story's nobody can escape the camera. In fact, I heard from a production team talking about they were doing a shoot for Ray-Ban in VR. They were shooting on a beach of a couple going through, there's a marriage proposal, and the production team had to run a mile down the beach and hide because the cameras see everything. And so, as Eric was saying, it requires a very different mentality in terms of production. But what's fascinating is that it's going to open up an entire new generation of producers that allow everything to be experienced and seen. But there's like no rules right now. So everyone in real time is trying to figure out how it works because it's all moving so fast. In fact, on the software side, we've just been finding that even in the last month or two, the tools that we needed a year ago are just starting to come out onto the market. So it's an exciting time to start learning about it. And on the audio side, again, it's going to open up an entirely new category of media development that really OU is on the cutting edge of right now to prepare people for the marketplace. So it's great stuff. So.
Okay, so we're just going to wrap up talking about some opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, we have comm classes now running year-round. We also have a mentorship program that's going to kick off this fall, which I'll talk about here in a second. And we also have hourly employment opportunities at the Grid Lab. We currently have 17 students on our staff. If you're going to be here this summer, we have 2 classes that are going to be offered, COM 1200, Understanding Virtual Reality Technology, and COM 2200, which is our first virtual reality production class. Both of these classes are open to all students. If you're just interested in it and you're a business major, we encourage you to enroll. In fact, our curriculum is designed that way. We expect half of our students to kind of be interested in developing or producing this, producing content with this technology, and the other half more interested in doing research with this technology or developing educational experiences around this technology. So we actually have 2 tracks. You all start off together. You can kind of split into one of those 2 tracks, and then towards your junior or senior year, you come back together for one collective Tier 3 experience where researchers, business students, media production students all come together and create new companies or really viable research projects. We also have several classes that are going to be offered at the graduate level. We expect those classes to start rolling out next spring. Is that correct? Next spring. So you can keep an eye out for those. Those are going to be under the Media School of Media prefix. Our mentorship program begins this fall. This is designed to kind of run in parallel with our classes, and it's designed to get students paired up with faculty members and other staff that are working on research projects in virtual and augmented reality. This is either for credit or you can just do it if you want to participate, and you kind of level up. So we have opportunities that kind of help you grow through this mentorship program over your 4 years here as an undergraduate student. Hourly employment, on March 1st, we're going to be posting jobs that we'll be hiring for this summer. So this is a listing of some of the areas in which we are hiring for. If you're at all interested, please keep an eye on our website, gridlab.ohio.edu. And again, those will become posted live on March 1st. I'd like to give a shout out to our team. We have a very excellent student team. Many of them are here. Wave, stand up. They're all shy. One of them's in a suit. I don't know. If you'd like to get a hold of myself or Eric or Josh or Anthony, our project manager, Anthony is kind of the mother of the Grid Lab over there, so if you ever need anything, he's the guy to go to. He's the mama bear. And here are some other ways to get a hold of us. And I don't know if we still have time left for questions, or turn it back over to Sarah.
We could take. Colin, go ahead.
So I'm curious, just because I love this stuff. As far as like the PC Mac rift, what is your advice? Where do you have to fall if you want to actually be able to be involved in this?
Be careful with this answer.
Be careful, yeah. I'm an Apple guy. We come from an Apple college. It's predominantly on Windows now. I think that'll change with Apple getting more invested in this space, but if you want to do development work, even if you just want to have one of these VR headsets for playback experiences, you really have to be on Windows at the moment.
How do you protect your intellectual property? Is it copyright, patents, or
Yes.
trade secrets?
It's kind of all of the above. We work more in the copyright space. Software changes so quickly that patent protection's not feasible, really. Now, we're working on some projects that require us to develop some unique input devices. Those will most likely go down the patent path, and they'll take many years to develop and perfect, and also will be viable for many years.
You got a question
Guys,
back
wanna get
there?
on the mic over here?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a lot of room for development in this field. Like you said, it's new and there's really no tools right now. So my question is, what tools and resources does Riva have that entrepreneurial students can come?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was, what resources do we have at the Grid Lab that entrepreneurial students could benefit from? Is that accurate? Right now, it's primarily we have a lot of students working in this space, and I think that's our biggest asset, our biggest resource. Since there are no rules, there isn't like what we call the iMovie equivalent of virtual reality development, where you just download it on your iMac and you hit a couple buttons and you have a unique experience. So you really have to find some other students that are doing the kind of the under the hood type stuff and partner with them. Also, the classes, right? So, Eric, do you want to speak a little bit more to the classes that we're going to be offering?
Sure, yeah. So at the undergraduate level, one of the things we're trying to create, as John said, there's 2 tracks. The pink track is primarily production based, and the white track is primarily conceptually based. And you can pick and choose your way through these, or you can stick with one specific track or the other. But what's really cool is in this area, this is a class that will be offered in the fall, and the idea is that it would be cross-listed with other disciplines. And so it might be from the Entrepreneurial Center and the Grid Lab, right? We would work in this space to kind of come up with concepts that would then be actualized in 4250, right? And so conceptually then, you would design it, create it. Notice that this is pink and white, right? This is going to be a class that's going to be everybody working together. And then that could branch off. Now, the other thing that's really exciting is running parallel to all this is the graduate experience. And so the Scripps College of Communication is starting an MFA in Communication Media Arts in the fall. Now, those students are going to be able to take these similar classes at the graduate level, but then they're also going to be working on pre-thesis and their thesis work in areas of combined communication projects. And so they might start working side by side with professors or different departments to actualize, something that's been conceptualized here or in the graduate thread.
And actually, if you want to go back to the slide on the student employees, like right now, if you're a student that really wants to help create knowledge in this space, like the students that my students that are working with me, the students that are working in animation, like there are not answers. And like we're right alongside of major developers. So it's a great space to learn and to do and to create something that's actually going to develop a new workflow and actually shape the field. So.
While progress has been made with it for things like motion sickness, what further enhancements have there been regarding that and other types of accessibility?
So the question was about motion sickness advancements and other accessibility advancements. I get very easily motion sick, so I can kind of speak to this. I mean, the thing that has helped the most with decreasing motion sickness is graphical quality. Each one of these is basically the equivalent of having a 4K television in each eye, so that helps considerably. Frame rate also helps considerably to reduce motion sickness. One of the, accessibility is a little bit more complicated of a problem. You have to design controllers where people don't have to look down and actually see what they're doing. Like you could not wear a virtual reality headset and look down and use a keyboard unless you're just used to typing well enough that you don't have to look what you're doing. Accessibility and input design is something that's really kind of a wide open field at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
repeat
that's
the question so they can.
is there a way to do live streaming video? Yeah, yes. So there is, and there's been a lot of buy-in from YouTube and others to create that space. I mean, I'll speak like on the music side right now. There's a ton of interest right now to, in the concert industry, all the revenue streams are the, leverage from being able to have one experience within four walls. But once you break out of that, for instance, Coachella last year was the first festival to have VR. Bonnaroo followed. Next VR, as I mentioned with Live Nation. There's a lot of development in that space right now, and especially in sports as well. Being able to broadcast like the NBA and stuff, it's massive. So.
And I think one of the other interesting parts is to see the complexity span, right? So right now you can stream live on YouTube, right? And there's a little clip-on camera that you can clip right onto your phone that captures in 360. So, I mean, you for $25 could now broadcast live in 360 through YouTube. But, as Josh is saying, that's going to be a much lower quality than being on the 50-yard line of an NFL game.
And I guess just one other comment to that is just a lot of the chatter that's been going on is that the next big wave is going to be in social. So like most of you know that Facebook bought Oculus Rift. So and when you hear Zuckerberg talk about VR, like that's his big drive is how do you make it like Facebook Live is right now and be able to create. And then Magic Leap, the chatter is holographically be able to have your friends in a room or a space with you and have that be kind of an augmented experience. Which by the way, I don't know if you read, like Tim Cook just this week has said, or last week, that augmented is the next smartphone, basically, in terms of reality disruption.
Last question? Okay.
Back to the technology, is anyone investigating having tactile sensations such as heat or cold or smell or?
Yeah, so the question was regarding tactile additions like heat, smell, what was the? Cold, yeah. So, and that's actually an area that we're exploring. Not so much the smell part, that seems terrible. But We are working on a surgery training tool where you will actually be completely immersed in virtual reality. And but if you move your hands down, you will feel body in front of you and be able to do some basic surgery simulations on that. That's right. So that sense of feel. Heat and cold is a little bit easier for us to create. I mean, if we wanted to create a fly-in simulation, we could put someone in VR. We actually have a stunt grid over at the Grid Lab, so we can hang them in a harness. We can blow box fans at them, right? So there's a couple of different ways that we can cheat this, but there's definitely a lot of room for research and development in that area.
Including in the area of physical therapy, right? So you can imagine being able to do exercises in a virtual space and be able to feel pushback, right? Or to be able to catch things or manipulate things, but then also imagine virtual medicine, where if you were the therapist and I was the patient and I'm doing well on my exercises, you might push back harder, right? But you're 5 states away, but you're treating me, and we're like Josh was saying, we're interacting in a social VR space with tactile. And just a gross note, there is the smell-o-vision that does exist. Somebody has come up with that.
It's really gross.
Interactive smell, yeah. But it exists.
Too much reality, dude.
Too much reality.
Okay, guys. They promised to let you guys come up and look at the stuff, and I know I'm standing in between that. So don't forget, 2 weeks, next Science Cafe, Jerry Botte from engineering will be here. The 3-minute thesis presentations are tonight at 7 p.m. in Stalker. And register for the Student Expo. There you go, guys. Enjoy.